compromise with each other. And it was a happy, what I call a modus vivendi, agree to disagree. Agree to disagree. Okay, we have civil and political rights which are enforceable, but economic, social and cultural rights which are not enforceable. But the right to life, the right to liberty, what does it mean which is enforceable in the United States, enforceable in India, enforceable in Brazil? What does it mean? The so-called artificial distinction between economic, social and cultural rights and civil and political rights had to be demolished because it was completely politically motivated. It had no basis because, as speakers have said earlier, human rights are interrelated, interdependent. Whether they are civil rights and political rights or economic and social and cultural rights. If you do not have the ability to survive as a healthy human being, you cannot have the right to free speech. It's obvious to any person, very complicated for lawyers, with due respect to my friend. That is, like me, he's a lawyer, but lawyers love doing that, but that's how they make money. Similarly, if you don't have the right to free speech, can you demand the right to equality, the right to food? You can't. In India, we have recognized this, that these are all interdependent. We also had this very artificial distinction. So you know what we did? Our Supreme Court did a very interesting thing. They looked at the American case law, judgments. Judges write judgments. Sometimes they take a very long time, so justice actually is squandered away. But when they do write judgments, one of the very important judgments of the US Supreme Court is Moon versus Illinois. It talks about the right to live with dignity. Now, I want to emphasize this to you. The right to live with dignity is the right of every person on earth. And that right inheres in it the right to civil and political rights and the right to economic and social and cultural rights. And the concept of dignity has been used by courts around the world, India, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, etc., to mean that it is not only a civil and political right, but economic, social and cultural right. And around the world, this artificial distinction has gone away. And that has created a movement around the world of which all of us are a part to indicate that all the rights are enforceable. But it's not easy to get that. Because the moment you say that, you are actually challenging the status quo. Because the structural inequality is based on the profit motive. Yesterday we had a very interesting meeting. I don't know the place, etc. But it was about how money is made by pharmaceutical companies. Do we know how much money is made, profit? And somebody asked me a question, but without profit, can we actually really get innovative drugs? And somebody actually gave a fitting reply and said, of course you should make in capitalism an adequate profit. But are you allowed to make unconscionable profits, which results in the death of people? Should drugs be priced so that people cannot afford them, which is happening all over the world? So that people are dying because they don't get drugs? Food, which is out of the range of people, should that be allowed? Should that unconscionable practices be acceptable? What you are saying, what people in South Africa are saying, what people in Guatemala are saying, is that this sort of situation is unacceptable. That's the first fundamental step that I think we all agree on. And that's a very important step. And the second thing, and I want to salute all of you, is that you have actually, without being very sophisticated like lawyers love to quibble about words, have actually started practicing and moving forward the agenda of the right to health. Let me just, with all due respect, just take a couple of minutes to explain what I mean. The right to health is actually recognized in a large number of international agreements and conventions. The US has been very shy of accepting this right domestically, but they are signatory to what is known as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which incorporates the right to health. But that right has been elaborated by the UN system, which actually has a number of things. Because it was originally not enforceable straight away, it was what was called progressively realizable. Now that's very, very important. What does it mean? And it directly impacts on what you are doing. It means that if you have a number of persons who require treatment on day one, over a period of time, the number of people who are actually on treatment should go up and not go back. There should be progressive realization and non-retrogression. Now, my friend Nina mentioned that Martin Luther King and other hospitals have been closed down. So the services are not available. There is actually retrogression, and that constitutes a violation of the right to health. But these are very important concepts to understand. Similarly, there has to be a plan. When you have progressive realization, there has to be a plan. So there is a benchmark, there are indicators which are monitored. And who monitors those indicators? I have a lot of respect for senators, and I think Margaret D. Thomas and Markey are great people. But the community must take control over these things. And they, being true representatives, are actually always here because they believe in the community. If they don't believe in the community, like a lot of people, they have no business to be here. The fact is that you have been able to get people because of your empowerment. So, you have benchmarks, you have indicators, they have to be progress and no retrogression. This is part of what is known as the right to health framework. That is the right to health, and that is what you tackle. The second part which you have realized, I think this is the most important, and that's a success story which I'll take back to people. And I want to again salute you on that. The right to health is not just the right to medicines or right to health services or right of access to healthcare workers. The right to health is informed by what are known as underlying conditions. What does that mean? If your water is not potable, if the food is not clean, or the air is polluted, then it impacts on the right to health. That's not so much evident in Los Angeles, apart from, say, pollution. But there are other things which are very, very important, which are also manifestly present in Los Angeles, and that is what are called social determinants. Inequality, lack of housing, lack of good food, education, all these are present. These are what are known as social determinants which impact on the right to health. And they impact adversely if you don't have them. And that's where you have actually hit on the key, and you have understood and actually practically demonstrated how these services can incorporate the right to health approach, because you have in your communities very successfully not only understood it, but incorporated that by having the systems where people are educated about not only health, but even language, etc., etc. But more than that, I think the most important contribution you are making is that you have understood that it's community empowerment which is key to success. It's not only doctors, with due respect to my friend Rishi, it's not doctors who determine what